Hello, good morning, and welcome to belt day. It's actually been belt while because I never filmed an intro for this video, I realized. So that's so fun. I've actually had the belt done for a minute because I have already worn the costume to San Diego Comic-Con. So here is how I made the base for the belt because I wore it just as the base leather piece, unadorned. I knew I wouldn't have time to do all the gold work. So here's that. You actually get to watch me drape something that's so out of the norm. So I'm actually gonna drape this belt and I'm gonna drape it out of canvas. First thing I'm gonna do, because I am draping this over top of my costume to get a good fit, I'm going to pin the pattern piece on a little bit and then just put little pins in where the center seam is, and then I actually went in with more pins and marked out kind of the edges of where I wanted the belt to be, because I'll be able to feel these through the canvas. I won't be able to see them through it since I'm not using like a traditional muslin, but I'll be able to feel the pins and mark them on. When I start attaching the fabric, I actually went in beforehand and I put in a crease where the center seam is going to be onto the canvas, because once again you can't see through it, and I'm just going to pin that on. This is not the way that you should drape anything. Let me just start out by saying that this is a very improper way to drape something, but I knew it was going to be super stiff and it was also going to be lace up, so the fit didn't have to be perfect. Do not do this. Don't. This is bad technique. Don't follow what I do on this one instance. But I'm basically just dragging the fabric around, and then I'll get to proper technique in a minute here. What I should actually be doing is cutting the fabric close to where I believe the seams are going to be so that I can get more of that excess material out. Like, once again, it's going to be pleather, so it's going to be stiff. It's not going to fit super perfectly. So what I'm doing is it's kind of fine. I'm also making this slightly big because it is going to be lace up. You get it. While I'm cutting here, you can't see it, but I actually have my hand behind the scissors so that I know I'm not cutting my costume. Like, this was so risky what I'm doing here. You can see me refitting it here for a more accurate side seam, you know, making updates. After that, I literally just folded that piece of canvas in half and cut it out exactly how I thought it was so that I could get more accurate lines. I'm double checking my reference photos the entire time. For the back, I did something very similar, but I didn't do it on a fold because it's gonna lace up. Like, it doesn't need to be a fold. So it's much easier to drape this actually, and then I ended up changing a lot of the lines here. Once I got it off the table, I did move and readjust that center back area, and I just kind of kept the side seam and the general sizing of the piece. The rest of it I did end up changing. I'm going back in for another fitting, so I'm just cutting out the general lines, and I'm going to only add seam allowance to the side seams and the center back so that I can pin it together and then know if I like all of my edges. I hope this is making any sense. This is how I always feel when I'm doing a voiceover. I can never tell if I'm actually hurting or helping the video. LOL. I'm using the same center front piece as I was before for that fitting, so that's why there was no seam allowance on it. This is now going to jump completely to when the belt is finished, right now. So I actually just sewed the belt very traditionally. I knew I was going to wear it unadorned for the first time. I just sewed it to a regular piece of bridal satin lining because I had some of that laying around. Now, to find where I wanted to put the eyelets, I did fully end up just using folding techniques, and I folded it in half and then into quarters, and then I obviously drew the lines in between those, and that looked good to me. I liked that spacing.
Here's my favorite kind of cheaty technique to get eyelets in the holes. I usually use an awl, especially for this small of eyelets, but you just put it on something pointy that you can start into the hole, and then it makes it much easier to not force, but to get the rest of the eyelet to go in, so that you can then put on the backing and smash them. While I was drawing these dragons on, I think that there was 3 or 4 different iterations on this same piece of fabric, and let's be honest, that is just how it works when you're trying to replicate something. It's so much harder than actually just drawing it on for the first time. But I just kept going. I kept getting closer and closer to where I wanted it to be, and then I finally traced it in this black pen, and I ended up really liking it, and I think it looks really good.
Welcome back. That was crazy. So I've been learning a lot about this process. Let me just say I have one section fairly done. So I am still waiting on these colors to come in. I should be getting them hopefully next week, but that should be super easy now that I have all of this done. So this is actually my second attempt at this. The first attempt, I didn't do any of the backing. That was a mistake. It looks terrible. The backing really makes it easy to cheat the size of the pieces, if that makes sense. I also didn't stretch any of the wire the first time around. That's also a mistake. You gotta stretch the wire. So now I'm gonna show you how I did all of this. And we're gonna learn a little bit together, but yeah, I'm very proud. This is the only section that I don't love, and it's just because I can't really tell what's going on in the photo. So I kind of figured it out. I think I got very close to what it is, but it's only 2 and not all of those. I'm just gonna leave that because I put backing behind it that I didn't need. But now I know. So we're gonna start on the other side. I mean, this is literally the same side, but you get it. You get it. I'll show you how I got there. Okay. And then also there's another section, I don't have it right now, but it's already done, that's like the flames coming out of the mouth, because it's 2 of these facing each other with like flames connecting them. And to do that is the same technique that you use to do this. So I'll show you how to do this technique too, because I could not find it. To be fair, I was looking pretty much everywhere and I could not find how to do that technique. There was one video and okay, let's get into it.
Okay, here we go, getting into the nitty-gritty of this technique. So I used flannel. Traditionally, you use felt. That felt close enough to me. And I also used organza. You can use either organza or mesh. I found the organza so much easier to work on because mesh just obviously has bigger holes, and I'm not as experienced in hoop embroidery. I found tape to be the easiest way to hold this to it, because if you use pins, then it can get kind of distorted. I'm also using this metallic paint pen that I had on hand, just because I already had it. I didn't have to go buy a new paint pen, and I'm just going to trace every single line. It's very important that you trace every single line, even if you're putting stuff over top of it. So there are some sections that are double layered with flannel and some that are only single layered, and then there are some pieces that have like sections cut off to go on top so that it's double layered in some sections and not. But basically I just hand stitched around the entire edge of all the flannel pieces. Then I went back in and I did like a running stitch along all of the different lines so that they were represented on both sides. Once I had all the flannel hand sewn on, I went back in with yarn on sections that I wanted to be even taller. So I'm just doing a running stitch through it first, and then I'll go back and I'll do kind of crisscross and just across the entire section so that it's really smooth and really flat. Otherwise it can kind of come up in between the wires and just give it a rougher texture. Like, I'm not getting it perfectly smooth, the wire does that itself, but I'm just making sure it's all very even. There aren't any edges sticking up. For this particular design, I found it easiest to do this bead first, and then I went in with the ball chain because the ball chain almost acts as an outline for the other pieces. For this specific ball chain, I used an embroidery floss because it matched it really well and it didn't stick out a lot around the edges of the ball chain. And I'm just going back and forth over the chain in between the balls. Now onto the actual wire. You have to give it a little bit of a stretch. Not an exceptional amount of stretch, but just enough that you can see little teeny tiny gaps, and you kind of have to stretch out the ends separately. This is the first technique that I did, and I use this for a majority of the piece. So you're basically going to pre-cut pieces that you think are slightly bigger than the section they need to go in, and you're going to feed them onto your thread as if they're a bead. You want them to be slightly bigger because they will collapse since you stretched out your wire slightly, but you want them to go over the edges. For the second technique, you're going to cut exact sizes of the wire that you think you're going to need. You see I went in and I stretched out that one a little bit more because it was slightly off. And I used 2 threads for this one, but you're going to go through, sew it on like a bead, and then with your second thread, you're gonna come up in different areas and tack down the wire, just looping over the top of it. I only used this technique if I had extra long pieces that were kind of wiggling around a lot, or if there were pieces that I needed to secure at exactly right spots. So basically any troublesome wires that are wiggling around, they get this technique. Once all of the wire was attached and all of the general first hand sewing was done, I went in with glue and I did a glue line along the edge stitches. And then eventually I did cover every single stitch on the back of the piece. But here's me, this is like my 4th piece that I did. This is when I really figured it out. You want to be really careful and get just the edge first. And then I went about 1/8 of an inch off of the edge and I also glued that. That's so that I can cut out along this length of glue here that's a little further away, and then fold it over and hand stitch the extra material down onto the backing. This gave me a super clean edge, and I knew that I wouldn't have any fraying along the edge, and it just gave me some real peace of mind for the finishing of these pieces. In the corners and on super curved pieces, I did go in with an X-Acto knife and I cut super close up to the edge, but I was super careful to not clip any of the stitching that was holding the wire down. I did a lot of extra work here transferring the design onto the pattern, but I found it easiest to actually attach the pieces together and hand sew them, leave little sections of the organza that you knew would be underneath another piece, and then hand sew those together so that you have everything in the exact right layout, and then you can manipulate it more before it actually goes onto the leather. I did have to go in and undo a lot of this original hand sewing because I didn't get it properly lined up. Here I decided I wanted to add in some canvas stabilizer, and I knew I wanted to attach it really well to the backing of the pleather. So I went in and I cut out a piece that was without the seam allowance on the edges, and I pinned it, and then I just hand sewed it all along the backing of the pleather. This is just so that it has less stretch in the future, if that makes sense.
Hi, hello, little update. So I have the belt half finished, like exactly half finished. This half done. Actually, I need to put a few beads in here, so that's actually really annoying. We're gonna figure that out without taking the lining back off, because I did just remember that there are, in fact, beads right here. Okay, this is fine. This is fine. Basically, let me walk you through. I showed some of it. So firstly, to attach these, you saw, I think that I was taking this and I was folding over the very edge and hand stitching it down, and then like gluing it again. But then to attach it, I was just going, it's easier with the chain ball because I was just going over it with the embroidery thread that I used to attach it in the first place. So anywhere that there's an edge like that, that's how I did it. And then for the rest of it, I just went in very on the bottom and just did little like 1/8" stitches just all the way around all of these little openings, securing it all very nicely. It's all very, you know, we're gonna be nice to it, but like we can really kind of, you know. I actually went in after that and I did this canvas insert. You can kind of see how I hand stitched it down, but I'm basically gonna do rows. I can put up a picture here of how I did the other side. I'm gonna do rows of just all hand stitched down completely so that this is more secure, because it was like creasing a lot the last time I wore it, and this is just gonna help a little bit. Like there's, you can see some of the crease lines. The gold work is also gonna stop that from happening. But yeah, that's what was happening. I also ran a hand stitch along this top of it to hold the seam allowance to the lining so that we can get like a little cleaner of a curve. And then the bottom, I just hand stitched the lining back down. So I'm basically going to repeat that. I don't have this piece done yet. Yeah, but that is where we're at. So yeah, I feel like this is a good place to end the belt video because yeah, I've explained my whole process and everything. So, you know, thanks for being here. I think this is like the most beautiful thing that I have ever made, honestly. And I'm a little terrified to wear it, but I'm also very excited to wear it because, like I said, it's gorgeous. As soon as I get these faceted beads on that I completely forgot about. Perfect. It's perfect. It's gorgeous. It's perfect. I cannot believe I got it done. Like it's actually kind of crazy. So thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed. We'll have one, maybe two more Rhaenyra videos before this costume is done. It's never gonna be fully done. I'm gonna be completely honest. But until this version of the costume is done. So, thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you on the next one.